And our first instructor is Karen Valencic, and I'd like to introduce her. She's one of the founding members of the Indianapolis Aikido since it formed in 1991. She has traveled extensively within the US, studying with a wide variety of teachers. She's committed to sharing Aikido philosophy and application via her work with leadership and team development in businesses. Karen is the author of Spiral Impact, The Power to Get It Done with Grace, which was recently released in a new Black Belt edition. Currently, Karen holds second dan. So, Karen, if you would go ahead and take a full half hour, please. It'll run a little bit past the half hour there. And onegaishimasu.
Thank you, onegaishimasu. In fact, let's do a bow in, just very as we stand, and just onegaishimasu.
Onegaishimasu.
And Lisa, thank you so much for inviting me to present. I have a lot of passion about my practice.
Oh, unmute yourself, please, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for inviting me to present today. I'm thrilled about it. Aikido for me is very much an integral part of my life. And I want to start this morning with just saying, and when I teach live, I always ask my participants, why do they practice Aikido? What has drawn them into their practice? And I think that's such an important thing. And it's really what's kept me engaged with my practice, because I've practiced for about 30 years without much pause in between times, other than maybe an injury or two. I mean, my reason why I practice and what drew me in was that I wanted to be able to engage and study relationship. And that could be relationship with people, events, or even things, and keep my integrity and honor whoever the other person is. And I believe that this time in the world has, it's like I feel like everything I've done has prepared me to really deepen my practice and really see what my practice has done for me in my life. So I invite you to think about, why do you practice? What gets you to show up here on a Sunday morning and practice? So, but before I get into much more, I just want everybody to get up. Let's get up and just get a little bit of movement happening here and stretch and get our energy going. And I like to focus on making sure that all my movement moves from my hara. So just moving back and forth here, just making sure that I initiate all my movement from my center. So then maybe let's get a little stretch in here. And then shoulders, let's do some shoulder rolls. And then bringing arms up, shaking them out. And then let's just do a few 2 steps. Okay, so what I'd like to do today is to start out, I have a little bit of a rhythm that I want to go through. And I'd like to start out with us just thinking about conflict, about what seems like it attacks us. And to do that, I like to make it real. And so we're going to just do something really simple. And actually, I'm going to stand this way. But again, that 2-step, that Tenkan move, I think is such a powerful thing. And a lot of times we just go through that without really thinking about it. At least I observe in a lot of classes I'm in. And I invite you to think about what's going on in your life. And, you know, we've got, as a world, we have a lot going on with the COVID thing. And here in the United States, we've got a lot of racial tension happening. We also have here in the United States a huge political divide, which is pretty intense. And so those are all great opportunities for us to practice in a whole different light. So I'd like you to think about your imaginary attacker is right in front of you. And what is it that gets your goat? And you know, I don't know if you know this, but that getting your goat comes from an expression where they put in goats with racehorses to keep them calm. And so when someone gets your goat, they take your goat away and you get agitated. And so think about what is something that gets your goat, that attack. And it could be just a thought about something. It could be listening to somebody. It could be your fear around the whole economic health of the world. But just think about what is it that comes at you that kind of takes you off balance. And so make it real. And then I want you to just think about, okay, I want to just do Tenkan. So imagine there's a punch coming right to your hara or to your solar plexus, and then just step in and move. And let's do that again. So again, you have that punch coming in, and just step in and move. Now, on a realistic standpoint, I'm so very aware of that is really challenging in the real world in terms of our tendency is to want to push back and change people or change something. And I think these times is really a great thing to look at. Where do we hold our attention with that? Where is our attention? And so again, just thinking about perhaps it's fear, perhaps it's, you know, I've got a sibling that may have a huge difference of opinion for me, or maybe another dojo member, and just how do I keep my center and move so I can see? Now, in the work I do in application in businesses, one of the things I always say is to change your statements into questions, acknowledgements, or both. Because when we push against somebody with telling them our point of view before we can see theirs, we always create more resistance. And so for me, again, I get back to how do I stay in integrity with myself, emotionally, physically, and all of that, and still be able to engage. So that's my deal. And this simple movement is something that you can do, you know, you can make a practice of this. So now I want to take this to a little bit of a deeper inner level. And, you know, in our practice, and this is something I've never shared. When Lisa asked me to do this, she said, get out of the box. And so I'm going to share some stuff with you that I've really not shared with other people. And I hope it opens your mind. So to thinking about things a little bit differently. But in our practice, we do this rowing exercise.
Karen, can I interrupt you for a second? Yeah. We have a request from somebody, if you could move back a little or adjust your screen so we could see your feet as well.
Okay, is this good?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
So thinking about this rowing exercise that we do, and again, I think a lot of times we get so used to practice that we just kind of go through the motions with this, but I like to think about, okay, this is really my center moving, and I am being conscious about where's my weight distribution as I come back and forth. And I think a lot of us get into this thing and we want to beat our legs up, and you know, for me that hurts. so for me, this is a practice of moving from center. And so let's just do a little bit of rowing on one side. And notice your breathing as you're rowing. And then on the other side. And again, notice, are your feet on the ground? Do you feel balanced? Are you moving from center? Or are you trying to force this thing with your arms? Just let your arms go where they might go. And be careful not to lift your foot off the back, but to really just notice that this is a transfer of your weight distribution on your feet. And how do your feet feel on the mat or on the rug or on the floor? Do you feel a connection there? Now, the next thing we typically do after we do these is we do this thing. Now, this, in all these years I've practiced, has been a confusion for me. We do this thing where we shake. And I have been experimenting with this in a different way because I know we want to shake so we bring our center down. But I want to invite all of you to think about this a little differently because I've been doing a lot of standing meditation. And when I meditate, you know, I stand and I oftentimes will put my hands like this. I might put my hands like this. But what I notice is that there's a huge, amazing thing that's happening in my body as I do this. And what I'd like to do is to have you think about, because what I've noticed, instead of me shaking my hands, if I am quiet and I sit here, my body, my hands start shaking me. And that's something that I'm really excited about in my practice. And I think if we want to be in the world in integrity and with honor, it's really got to start with us. And I find that as I do this, and I just notice my breathing, I notice where am I holding my tension in my body, and I just relax it. And there's a whole lot of richness that's going on here. And I know for me, I feel this, I do feel energy that's moving through my body. But what I'd like to do, and I like to set a timer for 3 minutes and just have us all be able to stand. And just, this is about aligning with yourself. And so it's about, can I stand here? And perhaps you might be able to start having your body or your spirit or whatever you want to say, your energy, it starts moving your hands rather than you forcing your hands to move. So really practicing kind of at a different level. And so what I'd like to do is invite you. Now, I do this for 15 minutes every morning. And so I have a pretty regular practice at it. And I find it's for me, it's life-saving. It's when things get scary, I always go back to my practice. And I also do a breathing practice as well. But for right now, I just like to have us take 3 minutes, and I'm going to set a timer. And I hope you'll take advantage of this to breathe with me, because I think it's essential that we really find that place within ourselves. So as we do this, again, just pay attention. And you know, the late Kevin Choate Sensei, and he did a lot of this shortly before his death, and in studying what is this thing that we're doing. And it was always about, okay, so let's relax our tension and see what that does for us. And then we're going to take this back into that Tenkan and see what it does with our practice. So, you know, I always refer back to Pascal. Pascal said that part of the problem with the world is man's inability to sit alone in a room for a few minutes. And so I'm ad-libbing that. It's not precisely what he said, but I've set a timer for 3 minutes. You'll hear a harp at the end of 3 minutes. But let's do this together, and again, breathe and just relax that tension and see if you can feel that energy. Because when you get that energy moving, it's really a really divine place to be. So 3 minutes and counting. Okay, everybody. I didn't push the button, so I don't know how long that was, but it seemed like an eternity, didn't it? So I'm kind of curious if we could show a sign of hands, how many people felt that they were being moved, their energy was moving their hands rather than doing this. Did anybody feel that? Okay, good. Raise, go like this if you felt that. Okay, so we got a number of you, and for the, and that's something I believe, as I do that, a lot of times we think about meditation as I've got to fight my thoughts, but for me and this exercise, it's about just noticing where am I holding my attention? Are my feet on the ground? Am I continuing to breathe? And it's really a focus inward in terms of those physical sensations that we get. So if we can focus on those things, then it really gets the energy moving. And I think identifying where is the resistance in our bodies that create that stuck point for energy flowing. And so we all have it and we hold it in different ways. But now let's take this back to just that simple thing and of a Valencic coming in to punch us. And let's just see if you feel a quality of difference when you move in and shift. Move in and shift. Move in and shift. And of course, it always adds a different dynamic when we have an engagement with another person. And of course, as we practice solo, it's we don't have that person there, but we have our thoughts. And one of the things that I have enjoyed, and actually in Lisa's class a couple weeks ago, I asked her, how do you add resistance into solo training? And she was talking about a wall, and I really like that. But I also, Eric, who teaches at our dojo, he suggested using a weight. If you have anything close to you that you can pick up that's heavy in your hand, think about this weight is very similar to uke grabbing your wrist and pulling you like this. And when you notice, well, what does that do to your integrity? What happens to the structural integrity of where you are? What do you do with this? And, I notice when I hold this weight, I get locked in my hip. So then the question is, well, what do I do to relieve that tension? And so I'm going to move this way. And then I come back into my own centered integrity in my own body. And when I do that, if I had a person here, I would be able to move them easier, because there's this piece of moving towards center. And I can even then practice some techniques with this weight. And I find that pretty helpful in terms of maintaining my practice as I'm by myself. So, Lisa, are there any questions out there? Or does anybody have some questions?
There are not any questions on the chat, but if anybody has some, please unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, okay. Well, I just think it's an important thing, and to bring it back to real life right here, right now. I think that there's that piece of, again, moving here. Again, it's this little movement that we do is so rich in so many ways. And what do I do? How do I adjust to that person grabbing onto me? And so this is my fake partner. So on a practical level, what I'd like to say is, I think getting back to that first question I asked you is, why do you practice Aikido? What is it about it? And when I ask students in my classes that, and it would be fun to talk to all of you about that, but what is your why? And one of the other things that I teach in my business work is thinking through intention. And I think right now, when we have we often forget about what intention is when somebody grabs our wrist or takes a punch at us, and thinking through what is our intention. And I notice a lot of times myself and practice partners too, we can have this intention that we want to blend, as O-sensei taught us, but the fact is that we get into fighting, and really being sensitive to where uke's center is, and am I causing pain for my uke is I think a really critical thing about our practice. And so this time where we are solo is a fabulous time to be really able to work on our own awareness of our own body, because as I do that, I am able to feel into, and I like that idea. And one of the things in O-sensei's Art of Peace, he talks about at some point as you practice more and more, techniques go away, and it's really about working with the universal energy. And I think as you can get that flowing through yourself, then you can start to feel that in your practice partners. And even more importantly, be able to feel that in the people in the world around you. And particularly as things are so tense and at a distance, it gets really difficult. And so I think, again, getting back to our basic movement of Tenkan is like, how do I continue to adjust? Are my feet on the ground? And where is my center here? Do I feel the energy moving through me? And this small practice is such a rich thing, I believe. So I'm gonna kind of come to a close here, but invite questions, comments from all of you.
If you have any questions or comments, feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
And I would really love to know, was this valuable? Is this standing? Is this a valuable practice?
I find standing practice to be invaluable, just an excellent practice. So any way that we can formulate or have different perspectives on standing practice, which I consider to be the supreme practice, is excellent. So I appreciate that, Karen Sensei.
Thank you. Thank you. I find that too. And I used to get really fatigued when I would stand and practice. And now as I do it and I can again focus inward and relieve my tension, it really is a very dynamic. It's not about being still. It's about really letting that inner stuff move through you. Anyone else?
Yes, Sensei. When I started, I did not feel any movement at all. And then as I released that tension and really just kind of let that energy flow, when I was exhaling, my hands started moving, and it was very exciting. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Thank you for sharing that. And I tell you, I really think 3 minutes is a short period of time. And again, I'm sorry I didn't set my timer, but I didn't want to take half the time doing standing meditation. I thought I might lose all of you, but I think that the longer you stay with this, the more consistent, the more you can feel that energy moving. So in all those diagrams we see in our various teachers' books about that energy flow, it's all right there inside of us. And I think in our busyness and in our tension that we don't feel that. So anyone else?
Yes, there's a question on the chat from Willie. Would you rest your hands in front of your hara when you do the shaking?
Yes. Yeah. And for me, again, this is about being comfortable in my body, because I don't want to, if I'm like this, if I'm holding my hands up high, I want to just have a very natural bend in my elbows and hold my hands right there so that I'm not creating more tension by this exercise. So, and I know sometimes, there's practices where you hold your arms here and that's fine, that's good, that's fine too. But I find for me, I wanna reduce the amount of physical tension I'm feeling so that I can feel my energy moving.
Any other questions?
Yeah, and I'd like to just close too in terms of a practical standpoint. And I know that here in the States, I mean, it's so fascinating just to watch the tensions. And I think what I find exciting is to note that I can be in very opposing positions with another person on their viewpoints. If my intention is to create connection, I think so often we want to create, we want to change people. We want to make them see things as we see them. But if our intention is to create connection, and that connection always creates movement. And I find it really exciting to be able to have those questions and, asking people, tell me more about how you feel about that, rather than jumping in and trying to push things on people. And, and it's interesting that even with the whole mask wearing here in the States, there's a big divide amongst people with that. And I'm very aware of, I will wear a mask, and that's part of, that's my intent is to follow those safety rules. And I don't have to explain it or anything, but I can share my intent without having to accuse somebody of something else, but I can make it clear for me. So,
There's
okay.
one more question.
Okay.
The question from Belinda Lee is, does it matter which hand is on top?
I always put my left on top of my right. And I know there's schools of thought that of way things move. And I guess this is kind of consistent with how we tie our gis. So this is what I've always done. But you know what? I think it might be interesting to try it the other way. I tend to be more one of, I think sometimes we have traditions that teach us a certain way. You got to do this so many times. But I think I would play with it. I would play with it, but I tend to, and I think some of the other traditions I've talked about, and I think actually in our Aikido practice, we tend to have left over right. And I could stand to be corrected on that, but it would be interesting. And again, maybe more enlivening. And I think we're all kind of wired differently. So play with that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you sharing your time and your teaching with us. And do you want everyone to bow out?
Yeah, and is that what makes sense here, Lisa?
I think so.
Okay. So, domo arigato gozaimasu.
Arigatou gozaimasu.